Professor, you have served as CEO of Budapest Bank, Minister of Finance of Hungary. You have been Regional Director at the World Bank, Chief Operating Officer at the university, and lately you have been candidate to Prime Minister. You currently serve as member of the European Parliament as part of the Conservative and Reformist group, and CEU is lucky enough to have you as professor in the Department of Public Policy. Professor, we would like to ask you, in the current context, in the current European context, what does it mean to be a conservative?
It means that, at least in the area of economic life, we should go back to responsible behavior. We need fiscal responsibility. We need governments which create an enabling environment for structural reforms. We need to improve the competitiveness of Europe, and of course we need more European integration. This doesn't sound typically as only conservative, but it's like common sense. Nevertheless, when many people feel that now it is for the state to solve all the problems, I still believe in a conservative way that it is up to society and the free market to lead the way, and the states can only help, or for that matter, block this development. So in this respect, I feel really a conservative. Without doubt, the most challenging position was Minister of Finance in Hungary. At that time, in 1995, the country was on the verge of fiscal collapse. The government had very little time to try to rebalance the fiscal sector by cutting back on expenditure, raising more taxes, and at the same time increasing the competitiveness of the Hungarian economy so that we can grow out of the debt problem. I think it was a rather successful adjustment program which helped Hungary to grow at a rate of 4, 5, sometimes even 6% until 2000. Unfortunately, after that, most of the governments went back to fiscal profligacy and irresponsibility and basically destroyed all the achievements which had been achieved before. I think it was a good mix of restrictive policies and growth-enhancing reforms, but I must admit that it was easier because Hungary was still not a member of the European Union at that time. It doesn't mean that fiscal profligacy is something you can allow at this point in time, but you don't have those instruments which we could employ at that time. So it is even more important to emphasize the need for fiscal responsibility before it is too late. It is enough if I remind you the situation in Greece, Portugal, Spain, Italy, and a few other countries. They joined the Eurozone without addressing the underlying basic backwardness of their industrial structure. They postponed time and again structural reforms, and they accumulated a huge amount of both public and external debt, and they felt that was one way to avoid the pain of these structural reforms. And now, as we say in Spanish, la hora de la verdad es aquí.
Ha llegado.
Ha llegado.
Time of truth has
Yes,
arrived.
exactly.
For all
Moment of truth.
Spanish. Yeah.
Moment of truth.
Maybe it seems to many that behind the technicalities of the policy settings that you have advocated for, with their emphasis on privileging low inflation and free market, rather than full employment, there is a strong political coalition focusing on protecting the creditors' interests rather than society's well-being. What could you respond to this, Professor?
I don't see any contradiction between the two. Frankly, the question in 1995 was, as it is exactly the same today, how the country was able and is able now to restart sustainable high-level economic growth. Without economic growth, there is no way to create jobs. Without jobs, you cannot really lift the boats in the sea. You cannot raise the living standard of the people. You cannot just increase taxes on one part of the society in order to help another part. So I really believe that the first task in a good social policy is to have economic growth. And for economic growth to happen, you need to have a predictable macroeconomic environment, which requires a well-harmonized fiscal and monetary policy, relatively low inflation, and low debt. So we go back to the starting point, whereby without fiscal responsibility, there is no growth. I don't say that fiscal responsibility is the only important element in this policy mix, but it's a necessary, although still not satisfactory or sufficient element of that. We need, of course, social policies. We need to help those people who cannot find a job, first and foremost by re-educating them, to offering them new opportunities to retool themselves and join back the labor market. And in that respect, I think once again the question is international competitiveness. So in fact, I don't see any contradiction between the two. And since we are talking about a free market system, obviously the trust and confidence of the investors and creditors is important, because they are the ones who offer the monetary element and the capital for this growth to materialize.
Yeah, but isn't it also investors who actually have led the way to the current disaster? Doesn't the way the economic and financial markets have unfolded in the last 3 years contest a little bit the paradigms and the assumptions under which these kind of policies have been advocated? Is there any change, or what went wrong?
Yes, there is a change because previously, especially in the United States, the government and the central bank had the view that the economy functions best if it is left to its own devices. As a consequence, the real problem in the economy was not the greed of the banks, but the lack of government supervision. So it is more a government failure rather than a market failure. The government, the state, not only in the United States but also in many European countries, did not provide those so-called public services which are important for the proper functioning of the market economy. The state is an indispensable element of the policy mix and good economics, if you will, but it is very important to distinguish between a state which is protecting investors' interest, protecting depositors' interest, tries to sharpen competition to break up monopolies, rather than protecting vested interests of certain monopolies who would then create an oligarchy with the state. So I really feel that the big issue is how we can reconstruct the state itself, because the state can be used for enhancing the powers of the market economy, but the state can also be used to destroy the powers of the market economy. A good liberal conservative would do the first.
Thank you so much. And would you say we also need to review our paradigms beyond the government failure? would you say in yes or no, was there also a paradigm failure?
Depending on what we mean by that, you know, because actually
Self-regulation.
that type of ultra liberal paradigm maybe was prevalent in some circles of the United States, but never here in this part of the world.
True.
We always had governments, both left and right, which very much felt that the role of the state should be bigger and enhanced, because the market is inherently imperfect. I agree with that. The market is inherently imperfect, but the state is inherently imperfect too. So the question is exactly how we can make a compromise between the two, and how we can retool the state in order to correct market imperfections, and at the same time how we can enhance the freedom of the market in order to correct the imperfections of the state. So both elements are critical, and if that can be called a new paradigm, then I think it is the one which we have to pursue.